everybody. I'm here with Hannah Crumb, the Kombucha Mama. She's been a dear friend of mine for several years, and I love that she gives me homebrewed kombucha whenever I see her. So let's hear about her. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your kombucha story.
Hi, Sun. Thanks so much for having me today. We met because we both have a love of fermentation. And while you are the kimchi expert, I am the kombucha mama. I'm the kombucha
There you
expert.
go.
So for me, I wasn't even looking for fermented foods. I was sad, standard American diet. This was back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to visit a friend from college who'd moved to San Francisco.
Yeah.
And on the tour of their very groovy San Francisco apartment, one of the stops was these jars sitting on a table with something weird floating in it. And they go, "That's the kombucha." I never tried it. We didn't even taste it. It wasn't ready. But when I got back to LA, of course, on the Whole Foods shelves, there were a whole bunch of kombucha. So I grabbed one. I took a sip. Do you remember your first sip of kombucha, Sun? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, I had a sip and I was like, what is this? Like, it's a strange creature, but yet it's so refreshing and just like carbonation and the flavor I've never had before. I loved it from the get-go. I mean, but I grew up eating all kinds of fermented food. It's the heart and soul of Korean cooking. So yeah, but that was very unique and it was just very new. I just loved it. Especially, I really loved every time I visited you or we hung out, then you just give me your homebrewed kombucha with like bright color with like raspberry and stuff. It's just so nice visually, and when you taste it, you can taste the fruit, but fermented way. I thought that was really, really cool. So that's awesome.
And so for me, like a lot of people, when they first try kombucha, like standard Americans, they find it like, oh, this is really sour. This is weird. But for me, it was love at first sip because, true confession, I was the girl sneaking the pickle juice out of the pickle jar. And so I liked that tangy flavor profile.
Yeah,
and
I'm like you. I'm crazy
also,
about that
my
too.
body just loved the way it made it feel, the enzymes, the nutrients. So for me, it was just so exciting and invigorating. I knew I had to have it all the time. And so my thirst outgrew my budget, right? This is what happens to a lot of folks. You get hooked on the booch. It ends up being an expensive habit at the grocery store. And because my friends had their own mysterious jar, I was like, I can do this. I can figure it out. And so I found a SCOBY in LA and I was on my way. Little did I know that my passion would turn into a desire to teach. And that's how Kombucha Camp, with a K, because I'm cute and clever, was started out of my LA home 20 years ago almost. And
wow, 20 years. Wow, that's incredible. I mean, you're an inspiration to me. It's like your love and passion of the food, and just, well, I've been taking Hannah to Koreatown and we've been adventure friends. So these adventure friends are really focused on eating good food. So I'll take her to like any Korean restaurant and Hannah is always up for it. She just grabs it and put it in her mouth and she just savors it. So I always admire about that. So what is kombucha for people who doesn't know even what it is? What is it exactly?
Yeah, so kombucha is fermented tea. Right, we think of fermentation like kimchi is going to be your cabbage with your chilies and some, fish and things like that. Kombucha is tea. So we make sweet tea. We need the sugar. The sugar is the fuel for the microbes. And it has what we call a SCOBY. So SCOBY is an acronym that stands for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. Nice. And it looks like a pancake or a mushroom cap. In fact, it used to be called kombucha mushroom, but there are no mushrooms involved. And you add that into your sweet tea, you give it about a week, and it turns into this refreshing, sweet and sour, delicious beverage. And then you can flavor it any way you like. So like you were saying, putting fresh fruit in there, herbs, all kinds of things. And in our book, the big book of kombucha, we have 260 flavor inspirations, along with dozens of other recipes and techniques, tips, how to, etc. With 400 pages, there's a lot of information packed in there. So if anyone's curious to learn more, that would be a great resource.
If you have 260 recipes, you can play with it. Like you can change it almost every day, year round. That's really cool. So what does that taste like for people? I know some of my crowd are really big on fermentation and gut health. That like what does kombucha taste like? Yeah. Can you describe it with anything
Man,
relative?
so you know like how wine doesn't exactly taste like grape juice, right?
Right?
Like grape juice is sweet and juicy, and wine can be dry, or it can have all these sort of complex nuanced flavors. So
Mm-hmm.
tea traditionally has sort of an herbal, grassy flavor. And
Mm-hmm.
when you ferment it, because it's an acetic acid ferment like vinegar, there are
Mm-hmm.
these notes of a tanginess, of deliciousness, and all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what they call umami, right? It's the fermented
Hmm.
food that these little microbes turn the nutrient into, like, even though once they're not really desirable for the body, they convert them and make them into less toxic and more digestible. So that umami that I love, anything that's fermented, I'm like, ooh, what is that? And it's just like, yeah, that's an awesome way to describe it. I love that. So why is kombucha really good for you? It's been so popular, and now the days are getting warmer. I'm going, whenever I go to grocery store, I'm just like, kombucha sounds good. I'm just grabbing one. So I'm at the point, like you said, that I was like, I don't want to make that. Then I'm like, man, I'm spending a lot of money on kombucha now. Maybe I should make some. So that's where I'm at. So this is my really personal interest now. So why is kombucha good for you? Is it actually good for you? Could it be bad for you?
These are great questions, you know. So not only does it taste delicious, but because it's made from tea, it's really high in antioxidants and polyphenols. So antioxidants are really important because they help to remove free radicals in your body, which can cause cancer.
Yeah.
And polyphenols are a really powerful type of antioxidant, and this is what has given tea, green tea, black tea, its reputation of having cancer-fighting properties and things like this. Now, I'm not saying drinking kombucha means you're never going to get cancer, but these are some of the elements that are really helpful to it. Also, because fermentation enhances the nutrient profile, it increases the amount of vitamin C naturally present in the tea. And then the sugar also helps in the formation of B vitamins. So yeast naturally create all of the B vitamins. Now, they may not
I
be in
didn't know
massive
that.
doses like you're used to
Yeah.
seeing in a supplement, but they're
Okay.
there in a natural form that your body can instantly uptake and utilize. So oftentimes people will say, oh, I got a buzz from drinking kombucha. Well, that's usually a vitamin buzz, just like you would get if you got a B vitamin shot, or sometimes people experience a niacin flush where they get a little warm or they feel a small sense of euphoria. So a very similar type of reaction could be happening when you drink the kombucha.
That's really, really cool.
What is it good for? It's good for digestion, right? So folks, so here's a little story. My husband, when I first started making kombucha, every morning he was having a sports drink. Starting his day with a sports drink, you know, and every night he was taking an antacid pill. After 2 weeks of drinking kombucha, never had to do it again.
Wow, that is awesome. I can attest to that. When my health was failing after using steroids for 3 decades, the eating real healthy food has been just one of the cornerstones of transforming my health and getting off steroids and get clear, beautiful skin. And including, what's really typical about that is, going to bathroom, right? And it just, the beautiful movement, it detoxifies you. That comes with the package. So that's really lovely. So can you make you actually sick? Could it be bad for you if you eat too much of that? What's the good amount? Or is there a recommendation of like how you drink it? Oh, can you hear me? I think you're missing a
Suddenly
little
can't
signal.
hear you for some reason.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Okay, we are back on again. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, please. I know we have a little connection here because it's a real live. So that's the fun part of it, right? So if you have any questions, make sure you drop the questions in, and at the end, I'll ask Hannah. So please write the questions as you have them, and I'm keeping my eyes on it. So Hannah, so what do you recommend if someone is total newbie to kombucha? Where do you recommend them to start? Like, how should they begin?
So
Can you hear me?
Clear skin is another one of the things that kombucha really helps with too, and I get a lot of compliments on my skin as well.
Awesome, awesome. I think we have a little connection problem here. So my question is, so where, if somebody is total newbie, like newbie to kombucha, where would they, where do they start? What do you recommend? Like how do they begin the journey of kombucha?
Yeah, newbies, if they're new to kombucha, so first of all, you can try buying it at the store, because when you make your own kombucha at home, it's like a cross between a pet and a plant. And so not everybody's ready to cultivate that immediately.
Okay.
There's lots of great brands you can buy from the store, and just find a flavor that sounds delicious. So GT's is a brand you'll find all over the United States, and they have a lot of really great fruity flavors, which can be helpful to start. So like, let's say you like strawberries or you like raspberries, you can find a kombucha that fits that flavor profile. There are other great brands if you want something that's more tea forward, or Brew Doctor makes a lot of blends that are very tea or herbal flavored. And then there's also 𝙒𝘖𝙏𝙏𝘾, which makes some really fun, like ginger lemon. Their ginger's really zesty. So if you love ginger, which happens to be the top selling flavor of kombucha, then I would say try it from the store. Now, again, it's probably going to have a flavor you're not completely used to, but don't just take one sip. Take a sip, enjoy it, and then try another sip. Because what I found in all my years of sampling and giving people kombucha, they might smell it, they go, oh, this smells weird. Yeah. And then they taste it and they're like, oh, that tastes a little weird. Oh. And then they walk around the space and they come back and they're like, can I have another sample of that? There's something about kombucha and it's, the living enzymes and nutrients that just enlivens the body. And so if you allow your body to really take it in, oftentimes it will say, hey, you know what? Let's try a little bit more of that. Cool. Now, that said, if you're finding the flavors too overwhelming, you can always dilute it with a little bit of water. So water is just going to shift the pH. It's not going to be as intense. You're also going to hydrate and allow your body to flush toxins out by drinking the water. So don't feel bad if you need to add a little bit of water, because it also tastes really good that way.
Great recommendation. That way you ease in and your butt will actually, the taste bud will build up for that, right? So that's a really awesome recommend. So we have a few questions, and before we go into the question, can you hear me? It's real life. Can you hear me? All right.
It's my phone. I don't know what happened. Like, I heard you perfectly, and then all of a sudden the volume got really quiet. Okay. So I'm listening.
Okay, so it's not me, it's you. That's good.
It's me. I'm the problem.
So we got a couple of questions. So we're gonna, before we answer the questions, before we take the questions, I want you to, like, where they can find you. If they wanna find more information about kombucha or learn more about you, where they can find you.
Yes, I am at Kombucha Camp with a K.com. So you are gonna find there our free recipe. It also includes a DIY guide and brewing logs, so you can either just read the recipe off the page or sign up for the brewing logs. We also are on all of the social media channels, so Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you enjoy surfing the web, we are there with videos and tips, and of course, ask us your questions. We love answering them, but you will find us all over the internet. Kombucha Camp with a K.
Cool, sounds great. Yeah, go check out Kombucha campwithk.com. I know that it's super tasty what Hannah is making, because I've been drinking those. So let's take some questions. So the question is from VM. What are the best bottles to use? The question is, what are the best bottles to use?
Best bottles to use. So I like to reuse the bottles from the store. So first of all, because I had such a store-bought habit, I would just save my bottles. And then when I made my flavors, I just put them right in there. Now, the benefit to that is when I would be out drinking my kombucha in a commercial bottle, people go, oh, what's that? And I could say, oh, here, read this bottle. It's not exactly what it says on the label because I made it myself at home, but it shortcuts the ability to describe to people what it is you're enjoying. From there, a lot of people like the flip top bottles. So these are going to have one of those lids that closes with a wire. And those are really great for holding in the carbonation. I'm someone who, I can't even open a champagne bottle or pop a balloon. It just freaks me out. And so those bottles are a little challenging for me because if there's too much pressure, it can just sort of like make this big noise. So I like a screw top myself. I feel like I just have a little more control, especially if it ends up being too fizzy. I can quickly screw it back down instead of ending up with a geyser on my ceiling. But really, any bottle with a tight-fitting lid is going to do the trick. Mostly we're doing them in glass. Some people will use plastic. I shy away from plastic because I want to avoid any potential contamination from whatever is in the plastic.
I agree with you. Awesome. Awesome tips.
But that said, plastic lids are fine because they often have, or metal lids even, because they have a little liner.
Oh, good point. Good point. So another question is, when my kombucha is done, how do I flavor it without it becoming sour?
Great question. Without it becoming sour. So first of all, we recommend, you can flavor with anything. What's in season at the farmer's market? What herbs are growing in your yard? That was where I first found inspiration, was in my yard. From there, in terms of it not getting sour, so what's happening is you might be waiting until it's just to the perfect point of drinking before you're harvesting it and putting your fruit in. And when you add a little more fermentable sugar, that can reignite the fermentation process. However, if the kombucha is already on the edge of a little bit too sour, it might end up in a flavor profile you don't like. So first of all, infuse with your fruit and ingredients, then strain it out after a couple of days. Because sometimes when we leave the fruit in there, it can start to get mushy and weird and could lead to off flavors. The second tip is maybe harvest your kombucha when it's still a little bit sweet. So that way, when you add your fruit and you give it another couple days in the bottle, it won't be as tangy as if you let it go, all the way to the perfect flavor of kombucha and then flavor it. So those are a couple tricks you can try. Now we're heading into summer where the heat is warming up. And so the warmer the temp, the faster it ferments. Okay. So you might need to adjust how long you're fermenting for in the primary phase in order to prevent it from getting too sour.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So we're going to take one more question. Last question is from Liam. I have some old scobys that I have been sitting that had been sitting in a scoby hotel for a few years without giving sugar or tea. Can I bring them back to life? That's an awesome question.
Can you resurrect your scobies from the dead? The short answer is maybe. You don't know until you try. So what I would recommend is, rather than take a SCOBY out and try to start a whole new batch, is to create some sweet tea. Not so much, maybe like a quarter, like take the recipe and divide it by 4, right? So do a quarter size batch, then put that quart of sweet tea into the hotel. Now, the other thing, and what that'll do is it'll just give them a little bit of sugar, but there'll also be plenty of the starter liquid so that it will prevent any potential mold from growing. And then you just have to see if there's any sort of power left in them, then a new layer will form, and then use that new layer plus some of the liquid you created to start a new batch. Now, you may still be able to rehabilitate those old layers, but you just want to feed them a little bit a few times around so that they build up that power.
I love how live this is. We're in LA. There's the
LA, baby.
All right. Okay. All right. So tell us anything. I think we're about to wrap up here. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up? Any last thoughts or tips? Anything else you want to add?
Absolutely. Here's something I want to share in terms of the benefits of kombucha. One of the things that I noticed was that it really curbed my sugar cravings and my alcohol cravings. And in fact, kombucha can be your drinking. What I mean by that is the acids created by kombucha help support a healthy liver. And so when you put a little vodka in your kombucha, you get a lovely cocktail, but the next morning you don't have the same negative impact. And in fact, you might even be able to enjoy 2 cocktails instead of just 1. At least that's what I found. The older I get, the less alcohol I can drink anyways. But, even when I was younger and I would go out and, get a little too drunk with my friends, knowing I had that kombucha in my fridge meant I didn't have the nasty hangover, terrible headache the next day. And these days, you know, people are drinking less alcohol, and kombucha is a really great substitute for your cocktail. It's delicious, it's fruity, you can mix it with all kinds of different things, even without alcohol. It looks just as beautiful and gorgeous as any sort of cocktail your friends might be drinking.
Oh, yeah.
And yet it's good for you. And so you get this benefit of having a fun tasting beverage that also makes you feel fantastic. So
there you
highly
go.
recommend, if you're someone who enjoys alcohol, to have a little kombucha with it. You'll notice a huge difference in how your body's able to process and tolerate it.
That's awesome. I've been doing that a lot. And so that is great. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up here. And thank you so much, Hannah, for your time and your expertise. And people are so grateful that you answered their questions. That's awesome. So go check out Kombucha Camp with K@.com and find more resources and awesome 260 recipes in our book. And if you want to learn more about kimchi fermentation and ancient cooking secrets like this, so you can enjoy flavors while you're improving your health through your gut health, visit hungrygopher.com. I think it's here. There you go. Then this is a wrap. And since you guys had so many questions, I'll likely to bring Hannah back again on our show. So stay tuned. We'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks, Hannah. Good to see you. Bye.